is worship music on the rise while so much of secular music feels increasingly hollow? As people search for deeper meaning, are they turning to songs that actually fill the soul?
Today, we're going to look at the shift between culture and the heart. Check it out.
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us today on Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name's Jonny Hanson. That there is my good buddy, Andy Lamb. Today, we're going to be we're opening a series. This series is on worship. It's on music and its effect overall on how we can connect with God. And it's such a wildly important component of a relationship with God, I think, and I'm going to make an argument for that.
For sure.
That we really wanted to take the time and unpack a couple of big ideas that we think what we see through secular music and how that affects culture, and then how there's a rise, or at least it appears to be. And you tell us, viewer, what you think, but it seems to be there's a rise in Christian culture that's becoming more mainstream, and some of these musicians are becoming more mainstream.
What it really feels like for years, and we'll kind of unpack this, but for years it felt like the contemporary Christian music sound was just like this lame, cheesy sound.
Sure.
Right? And
that's because it was.
For sure it was. And so now it feels like, we used to say that, we have these artists that are doing Christian music. Now you have these artists go, no, we're just artists. Our music happens to be about Jesus. And so there's this shift in music that's been really exciting and fun to watch.
I specifically brought, this is my topic, this is my series, because I played music for a very long time. Secular music, hard rock, metal music in a band, and had some pretty decent regional success with the band. And it was a lot of fun, and it spoke to my heart. And I didn't realize until I became a Christian and started singing Christian music, and then really, as I've developed a relationship with Christ, read further into the Bible, understand a greater concept of who God is, how much God likes music, and how essential it is to the place where he is. Anytime you read about a prophet having a vision into heaven, there's always music playing. Always music playing.
Angels surrounding, singing, holy, holy, holy.
So, yes, but notice it's singing. So it really shows why my soul was always calling towards that, is because God put that instinct in me. He put that passion in me because he has it.
Yeah.
And we are in God's image. So it's that is a huge piece that maybe you're not consuming if you go to church once a week. We're here to now lay out some reasons why you should try to take church with you. So you already take it home by reading your Bible. You already take it home by prayer. Now we're saying take a next step and start changing some of the culture around you through the music that you consume. And I don't only exclusively listen to Christian music. However, it is a large portion of what I do listen to. And if for any reason I feel a battle in my life, it's all I'll listen to.
Yeah.
I need to be receiving affirmative, Christ-centered positivity when those bad things are coming and when they're happening. It needs to be washing over me, and I feel like music does do that.
I mean, you could just see it in your mindset in your day-to-day. You're driving down the road and you're having a bad day and you're pissed off and you're listening to Killswitch Engage.
I love Killswitch Engage.
Which I love Killswitch Engage. Or I'm listening to Tool. I love Tool.
It's great. These are great rock bands.
Right. But if I'm listening to that and I'm just engaged with that, it's just usually it's fueling my anger and my temper more and more and more. But if I'm driving down the road pissed off, having a bad day, and I throw on some Elevation or Brandon Lake or Maverick City, whatever your Zach Williams, whatever your flavor is, right? Then I start to hear the words that they're singing, and it starts to wash over my mind and in my heart, and it starts to bring me peace. And so
Absolutely.
For me, music evokes emotion. And so if music evokes emotion, then when I am emotional, and emotional just meaning whatever feeling you're feeling, then if I want to bring my heart back closer to Jesus, honestly, worship music for me is the thing that's just a switch. It just is like a magnet that just can take my heart and just in a moment go, oh yeah, I need to reflect on Christ. So I'm glad you brought that up and the value of that.
Gosh, the emotion part of it. I've said this 100,000 times. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but worship is 50% of how I meditate on God, how I connect with God. and it's the emotional side of it. The preaching and the Bible are the logical side of my brain, the intelligent side of my brain, I suppose, where I'm really working my brain to think about what he's saying when I read it, and then when I'm being preached to, I'm trying to receive it and put these contexts together. So it's like this, I'm putting it together as like I'd be putting together a roadmap as I move myself forward in life. So as I'm reading Proverbs, I'm trying to accumulate that wisdom so that I can better apply it to my life in the future. But as I listen to worship, I reflect. It's this emotional side of me. So I then reflect on the way all these amazing things God's done for me in that time. Because that's really what I'm doing when I'm listening to a song and it's washing over me. It's reminding me of all the ways God has been good to me, all the ways he's been generous and caring and loving towards me, and all the times he protected me when I didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
And like, if you're listening to good Christian music, I think it does that for you. And that's whether you're listening to contemporary music or if you're listening to like more classical stuff. I wrote this thing here. Oh, I got it here. I read this thing rather from our guy, A.W. Tozer.
Yeah, shout out to A.W. 1800?
Late 18, into the 1900s.
1900s, yeah.
I think he died in 63. It's from the Essential Tozer collection, The Pursuit of God, The Purpose of Man, The Crucified Life. That's a 3-book series. And Tozer's talking about worship music, and he's talking about the old hymnals. And the thing is I grew up in a Lutheran.
I grew up in a Baptist church.
If you grow up in Minnesota, let me put it this way. If you grow up in Minnesota, you're either Catholic or Lutheran. That's it. There's no Baptists up there. I've never heard of one. And what I mean by Lutheran is we went maybe 5 times in my entire youth. And it was because they would pay money to keep our lights on. So then my parents would feel guilty and they would drag us there the next day. And like, they didn't like it and I didn't like it and nobody liked it. And it was very bad and awful. And they'd sing these very boring hymnals and they were sung boringly. Here's what Tozer says about that. If the devil has a sense of humor, I think he must laugh and hold his sooty sides when he sees a church of dead Christians singing a hymn written by a spiritually awakened and worshiping composer. Many great hymns I didn't like in my early days because I heard them sung in some dead prayer meeting with a dead song leader who did not expect anything, and a dead congregation in front of him who also did not expect anything. Both would have been utterly shocked if anything happened. They had a spirit of no expectation. True worship that is pleasing to God creates within the human heart a spirit of expectation and insatiable longing.
A.W. Couldn't have said it any better.
I've been to many churches where the music feels dead.
Yeah.
Or it feels clangy, or it feels just, it's not moving. It doesn't move you. Now, it could be a perspective. That certainly can be too. It can be my perspective.
I would say that. That's what it is. Because I think
not exclusively.
Yeah.
There's terrible music being done by people who are over it, who are exhausted with their job. Listen, being a worship leader is probably tough. At a church like ours, it's got to be very difficult. You have 6 separate times you're going to sing per weekend. Is that right?
That's right.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah, and you have to keep the
and
energy.
It's the same song, and each time you have to perform like it's the first time you're performing that because somebody new could be walking through the door, and it could be you could be the vessel of song that inspires their heart to trust Jesus.
That's right.
No pressure there.
No pressure at all.
But like, it's still work and it's still a job, and you could have an argument with your spouse 5 seconds earlier. One of your kids could misbehave, and then you're out there worshiping, and you're like, your head's somewhere else. Or you could just be burnt out. Mm-hmm. This could have been your calling. Things have changed and your heart's changed and it's time for you to step down. You haven't. I've been to all those places and seen all that musically and been very uninspired while still being inspired by the music that I listen to outside of church.
Yeah.
So those things can happen. But as Tozer's saying, like, When you reflect on who wrote these hymnals, they might have been sung staunchly when I was a child, but as I have went back and seen some and reread them, they're beautifully written. These are people that like...
It is well with my soul.
Great point.
And you know this backstory of what they were going through.
Would you like to tell it?
I mean, loss of life, like loss of family.
Yeah.
And just to be able to, in those moments of losing, at the worst moments of your life, being able to say, it is well with my soul.
Yes. They died in like a boat accident or something. Like, I forget the whole thing too. But people died, and this guy, his whole family or something.
His whole family died.
Yeah. And he's like, but God, because you're great, it's well with my soul. And I trust you, and you have great plans. It's like, yo, I can't even fathom. Mm-hmm. But that's beautiful. And there's many of those that are beautiful. And I'd bet anyone that wrote a song at one point in time to God was overwhelmed with God's generosity in the time they wrote it.
It's amazing poetry.
So it is about the way you're receiving it and reflecting it.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, some of these big things that are happening right now in music. So since 2020, there's been a 60% increase in Christian music downloaded off Spotify. That's a huge number, 60%. Mm-hmm. That's a lot more people are listening to it. I wanted to say this too, like, why do you think, and I'll lift this up to you too, listener and viewer, why do you think that there is such a spiritual hunger right now in society? What do you think is going on? Is there a component that you see before we get into these successful artists and some of this great groundbreaking music?
And I want to walk you through some history as we get to that too.
That'll be good.
It'll be good growing up in the church in the 80s and 90s and watching the contemporary Christian music change. But I think, and this is me looking at it from the perspective, not I'm a Christian, so I'm going to give you my view on it. But I really think that people are sick and tired of just music being about, forgive me, but bitches and drugs and money and material and wealth and sex, and it's just like this is like when you hear music today and different genres of music, it feels like the same theme resonates over and over and over again to a different beat. And I think back to like the 70s and 80s and 90s of music and hip hop and all that. They were telling stories. Like it was poetry, so you could hear what they were going to and feeling. And now everything's just about the opposite of that. It's just like everybody's just, what can I get? What can I gain? Not what I went through. And I'm not saying that there aren't artists out there that are still doing that, but it just seems like the vibe of most music today is just stale. It's like where we're just regurgitating the same stuff over and over and over again. I think people are tired.
I think in pop music specifically, that's kind of what I'm hearing you reflect on. It's braggadocious.
Yeah.
So it's, I have all these things and look at how great I am.
How great my life is.
It's a weird thing. If you're just a regular person living a regular life, it can put you in kind of flux internally because you're trying to compete with this absurd caricature of humanity and what life can be. And then also I would even argue, like, because if we want to now include rock music and stuff, it's like there's a focus on the dark and the anger and I feel like it all feels a bit hopeless. And I think people need hope. And I think the longer you walk on this planet, the more you need hope. And I think the further society moves from hopefulness, there's more of a craving towards true hope. And we know that that's found in Christ. Yeah. So I think there's like this, as we see all these negativisms and we see these unachievable, what I think are likely fake realities being portrayed to us, we go, there's something dishonest here. And it's not touching on what I'm needing inside, and I'm going to go look somewhere else.
Well, we see a rise in mental health as well with issues there, and so it's
wild
just like
numbers there.
Yeah, so and that just aids into that because people are on social media watching what these superstars, the lives they're living, with their jewelry and money, and most of them don't even have it. It's just a facade they're putting on. But you're on the other side of the screen looking at it, going, "Well, I want what they got." And they're portraying that they have these happy-go-lucky lives, but most of them are dealing with brokenness and addiction that you don't know that.
Could be.
Could be.
How about what they portray seems unrealistic?
It does.
And so potentially is.
Now you get caught up in the desire of that, wanting more and more and more, and you're not finding it anymore. And finally,
it's seductive.
Of course, it's seductive because it's the easy life.
It looks like fun. It looks awesome. What I'm doing probably might suck. Like we were talking earlier, but it's like sometimes a job sucks. Sometimes just living your regular life can suck. Let's just be honest. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, dang, this again? Feels a bit like Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day.
Especially if you came up in a home where there was no quality of parenting or no quality of family there as well. So you've got nobody to fall back on. You've only got yourself. You got this measly job that you hate you're showing up to every day. You don't have a lot of friends.
And then you open up this thing on your phone and you're just like, wow, that looks great and awesome and super exciting. And then you're not able to realize or actualize these images in this thing. And then life can become even harder because then you're shooting for this unrealistic goal that, maybe a very small fraction of people can ever reach.
Very small fraction.
And then, potentially these people aren't even happy either. When you actually see some of the fall of some of these people that were on top of the world in our youth, we're two old guys, but in our youth, many of the people who are on top are no longer on the top. And then when they tell their stories, you find out like they weren't as happy as they thought they were. That isn't to speak for everybody, but many. Mm-hmm. So do you have a song right now that you're currently into? And again, viewers, listeners, if you have a song, we're going to try to keep it Christian, but I guess if you got a different song that motivates you, give us a comment. Tell us what you think. What's your song?
Zach Williams, shot weird. I have a Zach, but he has a song called "Friends on High Places," and he has these words that every time I hear them, they get me. And it says, "He says I got a twisted, broken story I could tell. Paved the road to hell with stones I laid myself." Just his music to me is something that just I really connect with because he has a similar story of alcohol addiction that I have. And so when I get to hear his music and the way he sings about his life before, his life after, it just really, it's what gets me. And, but those words just really, when I first heard them, I just had to stop, man. And I was just, it just it washed over me at first. And then I had to go back and re-listen and just like with a road to hell that I paved myself. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus comes in and steps in for me. But I love Zach, man. I just love the music that he has. How about you?
Yeah, he's got a great redeemed story.
Yeah.
Because he grew up in a Christian household.
He does.
And then he took his own path for a while, found out that was not the way.
A lie.
Yeah, it was a lie. Good point. And then he came back on the road, and now, boy, he's a great artist. I've been just really digging hip hop lately again, and just getting down with some of these Christian artists. Mm-hmm. There's some phenomenal. I was scrolling through Instagram, checking on putting out one of our videos, and then ripping back through it and just seeing what else is there, trying to see if I can engage. Rarely do I find anything really awesome unless it's some meme thing to send you about either yours in my friendship or my wife's in my relationship. That's the two things I'll do on Instagram. But I came across this dude, Z, and I believe he's out of California.
He's freaking awesome.
Yo, him and this dude, Brian T. Brian T is the actual artist named, but it's featuring Z. They have a song called Prayer and Repentance, and I played it for you. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Listen, here's the thing. Here's what's super duper cool, and this is what's cool about what we're doing. Is Andy and I aren't the two richest guys you're ever going to know. We don't own a broadcasting company. We are two guys that work very hard on our jobs and have decided to dedicate a decent amount of our money, but it's not like millions of dollars into doing this podcast. And what we get to put out, because we have great people around us like our buddy Felix and his wife Taylor, we get to put out an excellent product that competes with $1 million franchises. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is now happening in Christian music. Is guys like Brian T and Z can compete at levels that they never would have had before. And I'm saying like relatively recently, with the kind of equipment that you can buy affordably with the time you can take on your own to do your own stuff. And I bet they do. When I started researching some of their stuff, like these guys, all these artists now start on their own. Brandon Lake started on his own. He was doing little videos and stuff like that, him playing guitar, a little nerdy kid on the YouTube. But over time, you know, he just kept honing his craft. And it's the same thing with these guys. And then I thought of like, there's this dude, No Big Deal, all all one word, all lowercase, No Big Deal. He's got tremendous songs. He's got one, Never Going Back. We got a dude in our church named Christopher Sincere. He's got a brand new album. It is banging.
He's amazing, man. He's
incredible. I
incredible.
cannot believe that, like, he goes to our church, and it's like, again, his music is it competes on the level with any other major label, bar none. If you hear it, and then you take and somebody plays a different song from any major label artist, it is, the quality is the exact same. It's on par. So what happened? Well, proliferation of affordable gear and the internet has allowed us now, and social media is allowing us to find our markets.
Yeah, it has.
And it turns out that like all that force-fed stuff that we've been chowing down on for years, when like all you had was either you could go buy a $20 CD, or you could listen to the radio, or you could watch MTV from man. 8 p.m. till 9 p.m. to catch the top 20 that they decided were the top 20. We never decided that. Matter of fact, I wouldn't have listened to any of those 20 frequently. You know, we were force-fed all these artists. Now you can find your own artists that you like. I'm just scrolling through and I find Z.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, where's this been my whole life? I could have been listening to this since I was a teenager and never would have known the difference between what Z is doing and what Nas was doing back in the day. Or like the Wu-Tang Clan was doing back in the day. These were guys that I would listen to and be like, these guys are the best. And, you know, Method Man. I loved those guys. And Tupac and Biggie and all these guys. Now, the thing is like, you listen further into Biggie's career before he, you know, was murdered. His music was already starting to get a little goofy. You hear some of the later stuff, like on an album they released after he passed away, and it's like, oh, it's a bit cringy. And even some of Tupac's stuff, and then some of these other ones, just kind of like they get into some of this other material, I think, to compete in the market or to be, I don't know, but it got weird. These guys that we're talking about here, man, they've just stuck to like the message. And I bet they had hard times.
Yeah.
You know, I'm excited. I want to talk to Sincere because, and we said we're going to chat with him. But I want to just find out, like, bro, whether it's on here or whether it's just in life, like, tell me about the hard years. Tell me about what it's like to choose Christ in this category of thing. Like, there must be some disappointment there because I feel like secular music will do everything. And, you know, the people running secular music really want us sucking up all the garbage that they're offering us because they want us far from God.
They do,
and
absolutely.
I think that's that intentional thing. And this is me getting a little conspiratorial, but I think there's a conspiracy to keep us from Christ. And I think that's why it gets grimier and dirtier all the time, is because the opposition is the one that runs that.
Well, it has to get grimier and dirtier because it's like pornography. It's like, you know, you just take the simple stuff that you were singing about now, and it's good for a while, but it doesn't satiate anymore. And so now I got to go deeper to grimier and grimier and grimier to fulfill all this. But, you know, for me, I get it's kind of fun to watch music today and how the transition of Christian music, because, you know, I go back to the 80s and 90s, you know, when contemporary Christian music Christian music used to be just awful. I mean, just terrible, cheesy, awful. Then we kind of, in the late 80s, early 90s, there's kind of this breakthrough of singers like Amy Grant, who was the very first Christian singer to ever be number one on the Billboard Hot 100. That was in 1991. We have like Michael W. Smith and Stephen Curtis Chapman, some of these guys that were kind of paving the way for Christian music to make it so it wasn't just so cheesy any longer. But it was still the early 80s and 90s. Now, I remember when I was in my junior high, there was always this push in the Christian church about secular music, that if you listen to secular music, that, you know, you were going to go to hell. It was going to cause you to become it was terrible. They in fact, I remember I went to a Christian school and they had this video called Hell's Bells. And Hell's Bells was this awful documentary about Ozzy Osbourne and AC/DC and all these bands that were singing songs about hell they were encrypted with these messages that if you listened to them that demons would come upon you and take you away immediately if you were to listen to Christian music. When I was a freshman in high school, they did a CD burning at our school. It was like they had this big barrel, and it was like, hey, come bring all your secular music, no questions asked. We're going to bring all these CDs and throw them into the barrel, and then we're going to burn it outside. And that was your way of showing that you were not going to be part of the secular world. Because if you listen to secular music, it's going to poison your brain. You're not going to want to live Jesus any longer.
Thanks, Tipper Gore. Bill Hicks had a great bit back in the day. He said he's kind of riffing on someone saying, if you play the record backwards, it's Satan speaking. Listen. And he goes, listen, if you're playing your record backwards, you are Satan. Don't look any further.
That was a part of the Hell's Bells video they showed us, man.
Sure it was.
That was a real thing.
Yeah, well, that's just bizarro world to me.
But that was Christian music for years and years and years and years. That was just like whenever a Christian song, then you had like a band like Petra who came out in the late 90s who was supposed to be like our version of like Journey. And you know, I saw some of these bands because I grew up in the church. So I saw these people in concerts, and the only concerts I was allowed to go to. So you go to these Christian music festivals. But as soon as Christian music started playing, within the first 5 seconds, you're like, this Christian artist. There's just it was just a weird sound that this is what Christian music sounded like. And so for me, as I hear these breakout people today, the Forrest Franks and the Holvies, and I really think it started with NF, was kind of like the first guy that really broke away, that was singing about his mental health situation, about his faith in Jesus. But he's not a quote unquote Christian artist. And I like the fact that they've kind of moved away from this, I'm calling myself a Christian artist. No, I'm an artist. I just happen to sing about Jesus. And so I think NF was kind of the first major one that you really saw come on the scene that kind of gave us a sound similar to Eminem. That was
he was signed by Eminem.
Yeah, he was.
Or he might still be.
He was a lyricist. He was a poet. NF's incredible. I love listening to NF's music. But I think he kind of set this tone that, you know what? I can be really good, have really great sounds, and I don't have to be this cheesy version of myself. I can really reach a crowd with the message and the story. We've gone back to storytelling. And I love that about where the music is shifting to today.
That's a great point. I'm thinking of in the 60s, during the hippie movement, there was also a movement that went along the same time, and it was revival movement that was happening.
The Jesus movement.
The Jesus movement, yes. And actually, if you go back into that time frame around Woodstock, a lot of the Woodstock artists, not all of them, but many had Christian songs that they would sing. I'm thinking of like even George Harris from the Beatles. He had a song that I bet has hit 1 billion spins in all of its years being out. There were artists that were grabbing these Christian songs, and you go back even further, like Elvis would have a Christian album. Dolly Parton have Christian albums. So major people were, for a time period, back when our country probably was a little more understanding and
moral.
Well, that's a way of saying it. I would just say willing to, we weren't so anti-Christ.
It's a better way of saying it. Because I still think morality is antichrist. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean by that is if the problem is that if you are a person who's living a good moral life and you think that this is the way that I find God, that's antichrist of the message of Christ. The message of Christ is I'm choosing Jesus and I'm becoming a moral person because of him, not because of me and what I can do and earn my way to that. So I think that's the problem of a quote unquote moral message.
Okay.
We see that, not to get political, but we see that in politics for years. It was like the moral majority. It was like we had this shift in politics, and during the 90s, that was the moral majority came in, and we're gonna get this ship righted because we're gonna live by the right rules. And there was still I don't believe there was even Jesus within that, because it was all about the rules, and I got to follow this. And it's like, well, if it's all about the rules, I can do that for a little bit, but after a while, I'm gonna look at you and go, why am I even following these rules? What does it get? What has it gained me? It's gained me nothing. And so there's a shift that you can see when we look back of how everything's degraded though over time. And then I see like that there's this pickup going back up again where people have just kind of come to a level where they're like, okay, I get nothing out of that anymore.
The pendulum swings back and forth
Always.
in society. So we're seeing a pendulum swinging in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. I think it has potential to be great. How's that? I think some people are going to attempt to abuse it, as they always do. But I think I'm hopeful for the youth. Again, we've talked about this before, but Generation Z is really showing some promise on forging new relationships with God, and that's very exciting.
It is.
And I think as we kind of move into this next piece, it has something to do with this, which is, again, back to worship here, but like mainstream music, pop, rap, rock, if there is even any rock right now, the rock is very poppy, and it's all very provocative. And it's almost like they use these provocative gimmicks to keep your attention. So if it's a woman, she's almost always as naked as she can be, as sexually compromised as she can be. And it's interesting because at the same time, if you watch TV, we're told like, don't objectify a woman. But all the music is these women over-sexualized, acting seductive, and we're supposed to pretend like that's not happening at the same time, which is bizarre.
Great point. We have to be careful of that too, though, that we're not like, you're not going, well, I'm this way because they do that. We still have to take ownership of the way that we look at things, but it makes it very challenging that we don't objectify this thing that is working to objectify us. Because they're objectifying us in the matter that they want us to buy their product and follow their product.
I'm not buying it. I'm not receiving it.
I'm not either.
No, I'm with you.
But it goes back and forth. But I always want to be careful that we don't get in this camp of like, well, they don't want me to look. They shouldn't dress like that and somehow blame them that it's their fault for doing it. It's not right or wrong. It's wrong both ways. But I always want to be careful that we're not just like, it's their fault that I'm doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think of a couple of things. I wrote these down, There's this is one of the more bizarre things I'm going to talk about. This is so crazy. I've seen this. This is a real thing. In 2014 at the South by Southwest, Lady Gaga's performing. She brought up on stage with her a woman that is a puke expert or something, or puke artist. And she had consumed a bunch of like blue crap. And Lady Gaga is drumming. She's a very talented young lady, Lady Gaga. She's drumming, and this woman then pukes all over her while she's drumming. And it was like some sort of performance art crap. But she's just vomiting this blue substance or purple. I don't remember what color. I'm watching it like, what is this? And she's drumming away, and she's just getting puked on, and she's leaning back. And I'm going like, first off, how do I get there? Somebody else said it. I heard it on a different podcast, and I was like, this can't be true, can it? And yep, there it is. Sure is true. You can look it up on YouTube. We will not be connecting that video to this. You can find it on your own.
So strange, man.
You've got people that there seems to be, I think there is, this is Jonny speaking, that I believe that there's a lot of satanic imagery now being brought in. And again, do I think that Lady Gaga worships Satan? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know her.
Could she?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Does it mean she for sure is? No. She could just be using it as a gimmick. It's sad. By the way, you're too talented for that if you ever hear this.
Yeah.
You should stop wasting your time with that crap. You don't need it. You're super talented. Be grateful God gave you talents, goofball.
Yeah, but it got everybody to go click on her videos and watch her videos, right?
I guess. She makes money from that. It's weird. But she will do, like, she did this thing like Lamashtu. I don't know what that is, but I guess it's some sort of satanic cult imagery that she's been doing in her concerts recently. And then she did, because it got such pushback, SNL invited her on, and she did it on there too. Because there's again, this is the reinforcement of these things that they're telling, that the gatekeepers of culture are telling you it's no big deal. It's no big deal that she has satanic imagery and she wears satanic crap and does satanic hand gestures and satanic words. Why do you care? And what they're really saying is like, oh, there's no God, there's no Satan. This is all just games and it's all just stuff and YOLO, live your life. Mm-hmm. It's like they try to make it okay. And then you see it with this dude, Sam Smith. He's got a song called Unholy where he dresses like some goofball Satanist horned hat thing. And this was like on some sort of award show too. It's like
Doja Cat's got one.
Little Nas X with this song called Montero where he dresses like the devil. And they're catching guff about it to a degree, but they just think it's funny. And then
Doja Cat has a video called Paint the Town Red where she dresses up as Satan and is the seductive demon that comes through it.
Right. So there's always this sexual element. And then
by the way, she's naked in it and just has her body painted too, right? So it's like
these are gimmicks is what I think. And I don't know what else to say about it. I think that these are probably all fairly talented people with complex lives. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to keep a career alive through what I'm sure is very tough territory. Mm-hmm. And they do all this weird crap.
Well, we saw it when we grew up in the late 90s or 2000s with Marilyn Manson. Bands like Nine Inch Nails, they would just do these Slipknot. They'll just do these performance things on stage because they grab people. And so
I'm fine with a performance too. Like my wife and I went and seen Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde performed in the theater. It's a performance. We went and seen The Shining, or not The Shining, the Misery last year. Performed in theater. We loved it. Listen, performance is awesome. And acting is fun. I acted when I was in college. It was great. I'm fine with any of that stuff. What concerns me is that if that's all you're filling yourself up with is this stuff, like we said earlier, like if I'm already unfulfilled and ungrateful and angry, and maybe my life hasn't turned out the way it is, and then I'm just refueling that with more things that reaffirm my inadequacies and my inability to have the things I want to have, and then to speak negatives and exist in that space and be more and have it like fester my anger, then I don't think that that's healthy.
I don't either.
So I'm not saying like, I'm not doing the Tipper Gore thing where I go, well, we need to outlaw this rap music. That's absurd.
Yeah.
That is an absurd idea. People that say that are small-minded and don't have much foresight, I would say.
Well, it's the idea of like, I'm going to create laws to change people's hearts. Laws don't change people's hearts. Rules don't change people's hearts. So you can create all the laws and the rules that you want to. What ends up going to happen is people are going to push back against your laws and rules because they don't agree with you.
What would you do when your dad would say to you, because I said so?
It was the most, I hated it. What do you mean because you said, what? But why?
Can you give me an idea why?
Yeah.
And then, no, I just said so. Quiet, now get out of here.
Cool.
I was probably going to go do whatever that thing was he said just as so.
Why not?
Well, I need to find out what the conclusion is. Like, why doesn't he want me doing it? It's probably because it's fun, because he doesn't seem to be much known about fun, right?
But as I said earlier, music evokes emotion.
Right.
Right. And so if this is the type of music you're constantly filling your brain with, then you're going to become a product of what you're constantly filling your brain with. And that goes for anything, right? If you're just reading books all the time that are going to be, horror film books or sexually seductive books, then guess what? You're going to become a product of what you're filling your brain with. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's really interesting.
If you're exclusively consuming that. If I only watch horror movies, that will affect me over the course of time. If I'm only reading, sexually explicit books, romance novels, I might find myself unsatiated at my house if I'm a stay-at-home
living
wife.
in a fantasy world doing that.
Oh, and then I think the same thing's true about music. If I'm only filling myself up with if I'm listening to rap and it's all about dealing drugs and having hoes and doing all this craziness, boy, I might want to chase that a bit. I just might. I'm not saying you have to, but you might.
Or I'll surround myself with people that's all they're consuming as well. And like we talk in here all the time, iron sharpens iron. So if I'm not hanging out with some fellows that are thinking differently than that, then I'm going to become a product of my environment, of what I spend the most time with. And so I love secular music as well. I listen to lots of it all the time, but it can't be the only thing that I listen to. And so we don't want to set some rules and guidelines. Now, you may be listening going, well, I have a conviction that I don't listen to it. That's fine. If you have a conviction, that's what God has told you not to do, then you do that for you. But the problem is the moment you create a legalism and say, well, no, this is what everybody needs to do, that's a legalism. There's nothing in the Word of God that says don't listen to secular music.
Great point.
And so we don't want to create a rule around something that wasn't explicitly said in God's Word. Well, how do you know what God's Word said? Well, I read the Bible. That's how I know. And if I have a question about it, then I'm going to find somebody who does read the Bible, and I'm going to go ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. If you find yourself
and have them point out in the Bible where it says it, by the way. Just because you get somebody that's super smart that can make things sound good, go, yeah, where'd you find that?
Yeah. They'll say, oh, the Bible says this. Where?
Where'd you find that? Can you show it to me?
Yeah.
Bring it up. Let's bring it up.
Also, what's the cultural context behind that? What's being said there too?
Yeah, spend some time in the Word, spend some time in the history of the Word, spend the time in extrapolating what was going on in this context so that you can find out if it defines what it is. By the way, that's all called studying the Bible.
It is.
Do that.
Elijah, my son, just did this video on tattoos.
Oh.
And so people
Does he have any tattoos?
Oh, man, he's got them all over the place.
I know he does.
They're cool. And so, but somebody had brought up the question made this video about that the Bible says not to get tattoos. And so it's like they're reading a verse from Leviticus. But the whole point of that is you have to read those verses within context, because in the same verses it also says don't cut the sides of your hair. So it's like, okay, well, you went to the barbershop then. So if you're going to live by one rule, live by the other rule, right? But we don't do that. So we don't get to go through and cherry pick out of the Bible what we like and what we don't like and what fits. We have to read the Bible for the context of what it is.
What does it say? Jesus did not come to create new laws. He came to fulfill them?
Yeah, did not come to abolish the law. He came to fulfill the law is what he said there. But, you have to understand the context of what he's saying there. He's still pointing out to the fact that the law, there's 613 laws. If you break one, you've broken all of them. The whole purpose of the law was not so you could be the rule follower. It was there to point to you to show that
you'll never get them all.
You can't do this.
Yeah, on your own.
You can't do this. So Jesus coming to fulfill the law he's coming to be the fulfillment that I don't no longer have to follow that anymore because I can't. I get to rely on Jesus. And what Jesus did on the cross is the fulfillment of those things so that I can be connected to God and be pointed to eternity through that. But, you don't know that unless you spend time reading it every day, man.
So what are we pitching? We're pitching that we're hopeful that there's revival on the way. And we think good Christian music is leading the way in that revival by reaching out to other people, by reaching out to maybe new people that wouldn't listen to Christian music are stumbling upon it.
Yeah.
Like Brandon Lake teamed up recently with Jelly Roll for a song, Hard Fought Hallelujah. That song reached number 40 on Billboard Hot 100. Number 40. That's bloody amazing. It was the number one hot Christian single for 20 weeks. It has over 1 million views on TikTok alone in just the initial upload. Not to say all the other various uploads of people, from
sharing
concerts and stuff. Now they were on, what's that?
Jimmy Fallon.
American Idol.
Oh, American Idol.
They were on Jimmy Fallon. I mean, these guys are making the rounds with this song that is reaching, likely tens of millions of people who wouldn't have caught a rock song, a Christian song rather, and they're catching it because Brandon Lake has had the wisdom, and the people around him or whoever have had the wisdom to say, we can talk about Jesus and we can make it awesome too.
Mm-hmm. And you take a guy like Jelly Roll who's got a crazy story of drug and alcohol addiction.
Story.
Yeah, and people are like, I don't know where. He talks about his faith all the time. Is he living it the best way possible? No, and he admits that too.
Or who am I to judge?
But
how he's living.
The fact of the matter
is, this big old plank in my eye makes it hard to see all the people beyond my vision all the time. I'm always supposed to be pointing out all these people that aren't doing right. Man, I don't have any time. I'm so busy and consumed with all the ways that I fall short of the way I want to perform daily for God and to benefit his kingdom?
Yeah.
Man, stop worrying about everybody else. Jelly roll. Is he the one? Yo, millions of people are hearing him, a guy who has lived a drug-fueled life for many years of his life, has tattoos on his face, looks like a wild man, calling out to the creator of the universe saying, God, I fall short all the time. Help me.
It's amazing.
Boy, that's about all I need to hear about that.
Yeah.
And if he falls short again, join the club.
When he falls short,
Yes.
again. There was just
we all will. I'd take a minute that next time you turn to cast a stone, man.
Yeah. We're seeing artists like that are teaming up with these Christian artists, with secular artists. We saw Dolly Parton do it a couple times with Zach Williams on a couple songs. It's really great to see them tie into a message of hope, and they're able to reach the people. They're able to reach a segment of the population that, contemporary Christian music of yesterday is never going to reach.
Yeah.
They're never going to reach, because what they are doing is they're taking their stories about where they've been, their mental health, the challenges that they've had, and they're making it part of who they are, and they're adapting it to music that's actually really good.
Right.
It's no longer this cheesy thing that I have to listen to anymore, it's been exciting to see that part of it too.
Again, I think, a lot of it has to do with the accessibility to decent equipment to be able to reset the level of the playing field.
Yeah.
For these artists that don't have to get a major label to sign them. They can build a lot of their fan base online through these social media avenues. So that's, as we say, social media is a tool, and you can use it for the good or you can use it for the bad. It can at the exact same time be a good thing for one person and a bad thing for someone else. So
Forrest Frank, Josiah Queen, these guys that are coming on,
that's a great one. Josiah Queen, the Prodigal is one of his songs. Tens of millions of views on all platforms. Tens of millions of people are catching this great, it's a folksy bluegrass meets rock. It's just he's a fun artist. The music is super fun. Bro, you'd have heard it in the early 2000s being played in secular music. And it's just every bit as good, as music that major labels would sign, and they don't have to be signed now. They can do their own thing and really reach a lot of people. Hillsong United, they have a song called Oceans, and then it's also called Where My Feet May Fail. That has over 1 billion downloads. 1 billion. That is 1,000 million downloads. Do you realize that, just for a visualization, if you were to take $100 bills and you stacked them one by one on top of each other, 1 billion reaches the space station in outer space.
$1 bills stacked on one on top of the other.
Yeah. That's 1 billion. 1 billion is we hear it when we hear the news now, like, I just gave out $1 billion to this guy and $1 billion to that guy. 1 billion is so very many of anything, whether it's money or whether it's views. It's very hard to achieve that. A Christian music artist group did. That's impressive. And it shows that there's a hunger for this. I think the other case study that I just kind of went over is the Brandon Lake one. I mean, we're seeing such outgrowth from that when you start to look at what's really happening in contemporary music, Christian contemporary music. It's getting good.
It is.
And again, back to some of these other artists like Z and No Big Deal, and shout out Christopher Sincere. These guys are really putting together competitive quality music that is every bit as good as anything you're going to hear on the radio, and you can listen to it with your kids. And it can show your kids that, I think, and this is what we were originally talking about, it's like when we talked about a couple episodes ago, when my son comes to church with my wife and I, and he sees us joyfully worshiping God. Why? Because he's the king of the universe, and he chose us to live with him and have a relationship with him and have a great life. And we're just so grateful for it that we raise our hands in the air when we sing his songs to him. And our son sees that and he goes, man, boy, my parents are always turning towards God and just joyful when they think of God. Mm-hmm. There must be something there. Same thing here, man.
It's not just our kids. We see it with other men.
People around us.
People around us are going, these two guys who you would probably look at and go, would be just, quiet to themselves, probably not into music very much. And then you get to see them joyfully worshiping. And very often when you and I stand at the back, it's tears rolling down our face as we come to the throne of God.
Yeah.
And it's because that, as you said earlier, like 50% of our experience, and this may not be for everybody else, but we believe that just for our personal experience, 50% of why we're there is for the music. Yes. It's just what sets the stage for us to come to the throne of God. And as the music changes and becomes more and more excellent, it just makes it more and more adaptable to people that are outside of it. I show you that video of Brandon Lake. He said this thing where he's encouraging worship leaders to remember Bubba.
Bubba in the back.
Bubba in the back. And
Bubba's the guy that just showed up.
Bubba's the guy that just showed up.
Maybe he doesn't know Jesus.
Wife probably drug him to church, or maybe his friend finally brought him there. And very often we start off our worship sets with these Christianese words where it's just filled with deep theology, and those are wonderful songs.
Of course.
But not everybody is there. And so it's great when we have a set of music, maybe a song or something else like these other artists we've talked about that are singing about something that's culturally relevant, that I can understand, that I can get. And then as I grow, that I can start to understand the rest of these words, and maybe it begins to have a greater impact of my worship as well.
Do you remember the first awesome Christian song you ever heard? I'll ask the same thing to you, viewers. If you have something, comment on it. First awesome Christian song that you heard that moved your spirit, moved your heart, made you think of Christian music a little differently. I know mine. Would you like me to start?
Yeah.
Big Daddy Weave, Redeemed. I am redeemed. I was thankfully being rescued from the very pits of hell, from drug addiction and alcoholism. And I remember being in this kitchen. I was working at a kitchen in a rehab because I couldn't stop drinking on my own. And I was running the kitchen, and I was there late at night, and I'm setting up the menu for the next day, or for maybe the next couple of days. That's how I would do it. And I'm listening to 87.8, 87.9 on your FM dial there. That's a Christian station. And that song played. And it's like, I'd never, they had that playing in the kitchen. You couldn't change the radio station. The pastor and his wife who ran this place, they said, don't ever change that station. So he didn't. He just let it play. That song came on, man, and it hit. And it just spoke to being broken and feeling unworthy for a lot of your life. And I felt that way. And it talked about how God took this man that wrote the song and he gave him a purpose, and he wasn't done with him yet. And he had great things for his future. Here I am in a rehab, totally broke. My family didn't want a heck of a lot to do with me. No one that I knew did. All the things that I had, all the aspirations I had for myself were gone. Mm-hmm. But this song in that moment hit my heart in a way where I was like, there is a future, and I really like, that's the power of music. That's the power of a positive message fueled by the Spirit of God. And it just moved my heart. I hit my knees. I mean, I talk about sweaty eyes. That was a pool on the ground, man. But I must listen to that song a bajillion times after that. And it still slaps. Mm-hmm. You hear that song, it's just one of those ones that just is like, that is me. Mm. How about you? What you got?
I Can Only Imagine.
Oh, yeah, sure.
When that came out. I remember that song coming out.
Who sings that one?
I've been trying to think of that, and I'm just terrible that my brain is just totally forgot on that.
That's okay. Keep going. Talk to me about the song.
It's talking about what it's going to be like when we're in heaven and what it's going to be like on that day. And I remember driving. My wife and I had just stopped drinking and just stopped doing drugs. I was going back to church again, and just really trying to figure out who I was. Who do I want to be? What kind of man do I want to be? And, where does Jesus fit in my life? And I remember that song, and I remember driving down the road, and it came on 91.9 K-Love was the station in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I listened to it.
Sure.
And I remember starting to hear this song about what it's going to be like when I stand before God. And I had one of those breakdown moments of just like, I was just weeping, because I was just really starting to have this eternal perspective for the very first time that I'd never had before, of like, what is life going to be like when I stand before God? What am I going to say? What am I going to do? What's he going to, as I look at my life and all these bad choices I've just been making, what's that going to be like?
Mercy me.
Mercy me, thank you. And I think that was probably one of the more impactful songs that really hit home with me years and years and years and years ago. That's still still relevant today. I mean, even today you still hear it. It still just gets that, just can hit you the right way.
It's hard to find the numbers on a lot of this Christian music because it's also independent. They're not like, this isn't Elektra Records or one of these massive conglomeration record companies. They're all on their own little thing.
Yeah.
So it's hard. You'd have to like somehow, put them all together from all the different social media platforms that really play them.
Yeah.
Point is I think there's something coming up. We've been talking about it for a long time. We'd like to encourage you guys, if you're not already listening to Christian music, give it a shot. There's some pretty awesome stuff up there. I think we already gave you some great artists. We got Brandon Lake. If you like rock music, Brandon Lake, it's rock music. Now, he does some gospel, and he does some blues, and he does a bunch of other stuff. Zach Williams is awesome.
Brandon Lake in concert's fun, too, man. That boy can perform. He gets down. It's a great time, man. Zach Williams, we've seen
dozen times now, I suppose.
So many times.
Then we got some of if you like hip hop, Z, Brian, Bryann, there's two N's, Brian T, featuring Z, Prayer and Repentance, killer song. No Big Deal, all lowercase, all one word. Christopher Sincere, he's got a song, Godless. It is killer. It's on his new album. I mean, it slaps.
It's so
for
good.
Sure. And then there's just a bunch of other really wholesome, excellent songs. You can catch it on your local Christian station. You can put Christian station into all these different.
You got these mainstay guys. Lecrae is still.
Oh, Lecrae's phenomenal. That's a great one. I'm glad you brought him up too.
He's still going today, man. He's kind of a pioneer of the Christian hip hop.
That's another great
too.
Yeah. So there are alternatives potentially to what you're listening to. Are you listening to stuff that is speaking power into you, or are you listening to stuff that's keeping you aggravated, keeping you upset? Are you facing something hard? I really, truly believe that if I am struggling, if I'm angry, Andy said it earlier, sometimes just putting on Christian music and letting it wash over me. Brandon Lake says it in Hard Fought Hallelujah. He says some days it's hard to raise your hands, but on those days I lift them just a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. He says that because it's like there's something about, you are in a stank, you are in a funk, things suck, but there's something about saying, God, you have the glory, you'll change things in your time. What's the lesson I can be learning? And I'm going to praise you through this. Amen, and it's hard.
It is hard.
But it's like, that's where the power is. Because he's shaping you to be the better version of you in those hard times. He's forging you into the weapon you can be. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it takes just stanking in it and being like, you know what, God, even though this sucks and even though this is hard, you are not. You are good. And you've got great plans. And I'm going to trust in you, and I'm going to grind through this thing and, hallelujah to it.
Band from years ago, Casting Crowns, had that song, Praise You in the Storm.
There you go.
It's very much like that. That song resonated with me. That. Like, there's just some days when I'm coming in to worship God, it takes a song or two before I'm fighting, and I'm just like, this life is not going well. And
usually it's because something I've been doing up in my head, or some reaction I had to something that was uncalled for. Maybe I got in an argument with my wife, or I'm upset with somebody at work or something I'm doing. It's usually me and how I'm seeing life. Mm-hmm. And turning on that music and just letting it wash over me sometimes can get that changed out. So I just encourage you guys, start checking that stuff out.
Yeah, man.
What else you got, buddy?
Brother, I think that caps it for the day, man. I think as we next week we start to kind of really unpack of like really the influence of music today on how it can change us from inside out. And then we'll have an interview coming up with an amazing worship leader that we're real excited for you guys to see. It's going to be our first woman that interview that we'll have on here. We think women can say things, but she's got a really, really great story of where she came from and her view of worship music and how she sets the tone for things. So be on the lookout for that interview in the next few weeks here after you watch this podcast here. Again, thank you guys so much for subscribing to what we're doing here. If you're still on here listening, thank you for following up at the end. If you would right now, just leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought about the episode. Tell us where you're from.
Tell us what you're feeling from. What do you think of worship music? Is there a song that inspires you? Write that in there quick.
Yeah.
The next episode's going to be great. We're actually going to go through some of the physiology that happens in your brain as you listen to music. You wouldn't believe it. It's one of the only things, I'll give you this little sneak peek. When you are listening to music, you use more than just your ears. It starts opening up other senses like nothing else does. That's just a little sneak peek, but we're going to get into that and why that is and how that is. So we're going to do a pretty deep dive into some of the science of that, but then also kind of dig a little deeper into the Bible. What does God say about it? Why did he do that?
I'm excited for that conversation, man. It's going to be good.
Guys, we are Untrained, philosophical discussionists, Jonny Hanson, Andy Lamb. And we thank you so much for joining us. We want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus, and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
They said amen.
Sure did, brother.